In progress.
Abrogation of Article 370 and the NRC CAI movement. He has studied as engineer in electrical and electronics. He has worked as parliamentary election. He had served as returning officer and had spoken about the vulnerability of EVM system in interviews and on social media. He had raised this issue during the training of returning officers in Delhi conducted by ECI before 2019 election too. He speaks about the current EVM system after seeing it in operation and raising concerns about the same. Mr. Madhav Deshpande, many of you might have heard him before in interviews with Indie podcast as well as Wire. He's an expert with vital experience from field of algorithm networks in computer science and also co-founder of Tulip Software and Mukta Vidya Open School. He's the architect and lead of world's first mobile-based low-level storage management app. He has identified key problems with our current EVM system and also had suggestions for dealing with those critical problems. Then we have Senior Counsel Mihir Desai, who is Vice President of PUCL National, who will moderate this conversation as well as speak on whether this given current EVM system ensures our right to vote as guaranteed by our constitution. Mihir, now over to you.
Thank you, Sandhya. It's a pleasure welcoming all of you here on an issue which has been simmering since a long time. There are various grievances raised about the EVM itself. Some of them appear to be very, very genuine and very reasonable apprehensions. Some of them, on the other hand, appear to be absurd because people are not really familiar with how the EVM actually works and what is the manner of tempering it. How can you temper it? We are not here to say, at least I don't think many of us are here to say that go back to the ballot boxes. We are saying that you can have an EVM system, but that EVM and voting by EVM system, but the present EVM system, despite it getting a veneer of technology savvy, etc., 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 that system is still prone to acute misuse, which can change the entire voting pattern. Those possibilities are very strong. Not only that, I think what both the speakers will be speaking about is that while these problems are there, namely tempering with the EVM machine, VVPAT boxes, then the control unit, etc., etc., which can really change the whole nature of the election. These are matters which can be solved. These are matters which can be which we can control and which we can resolve in a manner that the system becomes functional, becomes effective. So that is what we are going to speak about, the problems with the EVM as it is presently, and how do you resolve them with technology, and on the basis of that make a demand to the Election Commission and if required to the courts that these are the things which should be done. Otherwise, there is likely to be a major problem with the way the elections are conducted. Now, remember one thing, our constitution, and it has been interpreted by the Supreme Court time and again, that democracy is a part of our basic structure of the constitution. So democracy is not something which you can do away even with a constitutional amendment. And democracy obviously means right to vote. I mean, direct participation in elections, direct participation to vote. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has time to time said that while voting is while right to vote, right to exercise your franchise is a fundamental right, is not a fundamental right, is a statutory right. It may be a constitutional right, but it is not a fundamental right. this is a very problematic interpretation according to me, because though right to vote is not mentioned in the fundamental rights chapter, the right to freedom of speech and expression is mentioned in the fundamental rights chapter. And when you are actually casting your vote, you are actually expressing. You are actually expressing you're exercising your freedom of expression, your freedom of speech. So that is, I think, something which is very, very important in terms of it being treated as a fundamental right. But nevertheless, okay, the the courts have always held that voting is something which is central to our electoral process, the right to vote. And the constitution itself provides for mechanism to have free and fair elections. And one of the mechanisms is, of course, the appointment of the election commissioner. Because election commissioner, who is a constitutional body, not just a body by some law, is a constitutional body. In fact, the election commission cannot be removed except in the manner in which a judge of the Supreme Court can be removed. That's what the Constitution provides. So election commission is a very, very important body. The election commissioner, he or she lays down, okay, prescribes what is the method in which the elections are to be conducted. He is the one who says that, look, we are going to now resort to EVMs. He is the one who says how many EVMs have to be there, where all they are required, what are the constituency, etc. So election commission is very, very important. Any complaint concerning election has to be made to the election commission. Now, you might have read recently that the Supreme Court had said that the appointment of the election commission should be done by a 3-member committee, which will have the Prime Minister, which will have the leader of the opposition, and which will have the Chief Justice as the 3 persons who will select who the election commission is going to be, because that post is crucial, okay, for elections. Unfortunately, now a law has been passed in the parliament by which the Chief Justice has been removed and a minister to be nominated by Prime Minister has been put in place of the Chief Justice. So you'll have 2 persons from the ruling party, 1 person from the opposition. Obviously, the reason why this is done is quite clear. I need not go into that. Okay? But as I was saying, the right to vote is also there are a number of cases in the Supreme Court over the last 20-25 years where individuals and organizations have gone demanding that if I have a right to vote, I must have enough knowledge about the candidate for whom I'm voting. And therefore, the Supreme Court from time to time has said that, yes, if there is a criminal antecedents, they must be revealed. What are the assets of a person who is contesting the election must be available to the people. They must know what are the criminal cases, what are the assets, etc. Various aspects have to be told, because ultimately you have to be an aware citizen who exercises the right to vote. Similarly, right to secret ballot in direct elections has been upheld by the courts. The courts itself introduced the provision of nota, that a person may not want to vote for anybody, but still wants to say that I don't like any of the parties. So you have, so nota has been introduced. All these things have been there. Similarly, some of the issues concerning EVM have also been tried in the Supreme Court. One of the issues, one of the first issues was that initially, when VVPACs were introduced, okay, only 2 boxes, okay, from a particular constituency, okay, were to be randomly checked through VVPACs, okay, VVPA box. Supreme Court intervened, said not 2 but 5, okay, per constituency, which according to us is still very, very, very small as to the amount of checking which has to be done. But to that extent, they intervened. But Supreme Court has been reluctant to intervene as far as whether EVM should be there at all or not. That the Supreme Court says it's not our job to decide whether EVM should be there or not. If there is any defect in the EVM, if there is a problem with the way the EVMs are functioning, you can of course bring it to our notice. But we are not the experts to decide whether EVM should be there or not. Recently, we just and there are cases pending in the Supreme Court concerning validity of EVMs, the manner in which EVMs are like earlier, there was a case, and there was a instance where lakhs of EVM machines were missing, and that went to the court. So you have had the court's intervention on EVMs on a few occasions, but not truly effectively. I don't think all the issues which we are going to discuss today have been brought to the notice of the court, of the Supreme Court. And therefore, it's important to assess today also, because now elections are coming. Okay, so it's important to assess whether what the speakers are going to say. Okay, apart from it being a campaign which about rectifying the mistakes, the flaws in the EVM system. Apart from that, I think it's also important to discuss a bit about whether we can make out some kind of a case which we can take to the court. We will have to first, of course, take it to the election commissioner, and then, if required, go to court. I mean, that's something which we are talking in terms of hypothesis, but that is one of the aspects which becomes necessary. Some cases are still pending, as I mentioned, in the Supreme Court, which are about to come up, which are about to be heard, but many of these cases do not take up the aspects which we are discussing today. Okay? So people have been attacking EVM from different directions, from different angles. Okay? But I feel having heard Mr. Deshpande as well as Kannan earlier, I feel they are talking about issues which are not yet raised in a big way about the flaws in the EVM system. So I think it's important that we listen to them. It's important that we see whether what they are saying. We can discuss what they are, because they are not only talking about the flaws, but they will also be talking about what are the ways of solving those problems. And according to them, I believe that many of the solutions are not very difficult. They are easy. They can be done even in 1 month's time or 2 months' time. So we need to look at all these aspects, because ultimately what we want and what our constitution guarantees is not just elections, but free and fair elections, which is a fundamental right. That having a free and fair election is fundamental right. And therefore, it becomes important that whenever we cast our ballot, that ballot is cast in the name of the same organ, same party, same symbol. Okay, it's recorded in the name of the same symbol and the same party for whom we are casting the ballot. That becomes very central. I will stop here. I'll speak a little bit in case any questions arise. I'll request now Kannan to speak. Kannan, can you speak for about 20 minutes? And then Madhav for about 20 minutes. We'll take the questions at the end of both the speakers. Yeah, Kannan.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. So, yeah, like for me, I've been racing this, I think around like 2019 onwards. And I have had a complete change of mind with respect to EVM while being in service, because if you look at my 2016-17 tweets, those will be mostly defending EVMs. That's because I had conducted elections in 2013 and 14, and I was pretty sure about how the EVMs were not vulnerable, being a rudimentary device, and with a lot of safeguards that comes with it. The Election Commission used to generally argue that it is not just about the technical hackability of the device, whether it is hackable or not. It is about under what circumstances it can be hacked and what are the checks which are there. If at all there is a manipulation or a hacking, that how we can verify it or how it can be caught. So it is to say in terms of like a technical safeguards, administrative or process safeguards, or what you call as physical safeguards. So technical safeguards, the commission's argument essentially was always EVMs are a very rudimentary device and one-time programmable device. It has a ballot unit, which is a electromechanical device where you just press something. It doesn't have any electronic information as such. There's a button, there are buttons. And on top of which, actually on the ballot unit, if you have voted, you'll see a candidate names and symbols are there, which are actually pasted on top of it. There is not electronically fed or anything to the ballot unit. It is just a paper pasted on top of the ballot unit corresponding to the different buttons which are there. And then there is a control unit from ballot unit, which is connected to the control unit, which the commission argued is like a calculator. There is nothing hi-fi going on in there. It's just a counter. It just adds one vote to each candidate which is there. And it is also candidate agnostic. It doesn't know whether candidate one is BJP or Congress or SAPA or BASPA or any of that. it is a simple candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3, candidate 4. So the machine is electronically not aware of the candidates per se. Then, of course, one-time programmability was also there. And in terms of physical safeguard, the commission argued, because there was a question about what people said that, okay, this might be rudimentary. There will not be any Bluetooth or wireless or any of those connections, but it can be accessed. If somebody has a physical access to even a calculator, then it can be used. So the argument came about was the physical safeguard of it, that the machines are always kept in safe custody with machine gun, police and paramilitary and CCTV and double lock and all those things. And because of that, there is no physical access to the EVMs, and hence it cannot be done. So the argument about the physical access to the device and forcefully changing things kind of put a stop there. Then what happened was that there was an argument that, okay, what if something had happened before, right? Even before it came to the district, because only then we know the EVMs have come, and we don't know where it was manufactured, we don't know where it came from, what happened in the transit, etc., etc. Then came most of this administrative or the process safeguards, which are there, the commission argued. The first one is, of course, about that the machine doesn't know who the candidate is, right? It can never know who the candidate is. And candidates are only announced close to around 15 days finalized. And the sequence is only the Form 7A. Candidate list is announced only around 15 days before the elections are. After the nomination, withdrawal, scrutiny withdrawal, and allotment of symbols, and then a Form 7A, and the candidate sequence is done. Since the candidate sequence is not known earlier, and since you don't know which you don't know who the candidate is electronically, an intelligent manipulation is not possible even if you had an access earlier, right? If you had an access earlier, you put some program in it, you still don't know who is candidate 1 and who is candidate 2. So what are you going to do with it? So that was the candidate agnostic nature or a candidate unaware nature of the EVMs is one of the safeguard which is claimed. And then second, of course, was the first level checking, which used to happen as soon as the machines came or before the elections, and where all the political parties were called, and in front of them a very detailed first level checking wherein mock polls are done. So mock polls is what actually in the constituencies gives a lot of confidence to the candidates. So many a times we think why the elections are not challenged at the constituency level itself, right? It only becomes a matter of aggregate questioning at the leadership level, rather than why is there no objection by a candidate to the returning officer? Why is not that happening? Because that is where the issue should be. One of the thing that instill confidence to the candidates is called the mock poll, right? So the mock polls during the FLC, the first level checking, this is much before the elections are announced, and where the political parties are also called. All of these buttons are checked, whether that is just a physical check, whether they're working or not. And then also one vote is cast and seen whether what I'm voting is what I'm getting counted. And in around 5% of it, there is a distribution of 1 to 2% of around that, around which around 1,000 votes are cast. And the political party representatives of the parties are also asked. Dummy candidate names are given, like alpha, beta, gamma, something like that, because the candidates are not yet known. And then it is thoroughly, you can write down how many votes you have given, and then maybe you can verify it at the time of mock poll. So that is the first mock poll and the FLC being done. Then there are 2 more mock polls that happens. One is after the candidates are announced that the Form 7A is published. The commissioning is done, wherein the ballot unit and the control unit are brought together, and the candidates' names are actually passed, and the candidate sequence is done. The number of candidates, the lock is set, and then the candidates' representatives or the candidates themselves. Earlier it was political parties, now the candidates themselves can come and do it. So this is a second mock poll. Again, you can't call it a 5% random sampling, because it is not like if 1 out of 5, if there are, let's say, 100 booths, if you take 5 and 1 of them fails, it is not like we'll assume that 20% of the population is has an issue. What we do is actually search for a 5% good EVM. So it's so if one is wrong, we'll just keep it aside and we'll look for another one and then see whether that works or not. The one which is not working will be sent to the ECIL or Bell for a repair. So it is not random sampling per se, even though we use it very much. It is searching for first 5% of the working EVMs, right? Which is again was a loophole there. But that is the second loophole. And the mock poll, the third mock poll, of course, here also again around randomly selected 5%, like 1,200, 1,000 vote, etc., is done. And then at the last moment on the day of vote itself, 50 mock polls are done at the day, which was the most weak argument, because do you know that 50 votes are going to be cast on that day? There was this argument that it can be, of course, bypassed by very rudimentary programming that, okay, ignore the first 50 votes while you want to do anything. So that is a mock poll part. Even the other two aspects of the process safeguards was the randomization of the EVMs. The randomization of the EVMs meant there is first randomization, which was about where these EVMs are going, like which constituency. Let's say a district has, essentially it is more applicable for assembly constituency elections because the district has, let's say, 10 constituencies. First you'll randomize to which constituency it is going. That also is not known when the machines are coming. This is all to tackle the pre-loading of any malware or any kind of manipulated devices in that. And then the second level of randomization, which is at the time of just before the commissioning, which is when the devices are actually finally connected. Before that, we do that which booth should this go. So these are all unknowns when the machines are coming. All these are done after the machines are coming, and during this period, the entire physical safeguard part of it is maintained, which is that it is kept in a warehouse or a strong room with access only in the presence of political parties or candidates. No external connectivity is allowed. All these things are done. So this was the pre-VVPAT EVM process, and which was through which we had conducted elections 13 and 14. And I used to say that, okay, there are certain issues with the EVMs because the EVMs, what it surrendered transparency and verifiability when it comes to elections, verifiability on the part of the voter, and transparency to the candidates in terms of counting. So verifiability at the time of voting and transparency at the time of counting. So these two things were what I felt was surrendered. And the third one is, of course, the secrecy at a booth level of voting, because the pre-VVM had a mixing concept of votes, wherein the votes were not, you will mix all the votes and you cannot never know that which booth had, which booth voted which way, right? So that level of information was not actually given out. So these three things I felt was a major concern about EVM. But at the same time, it added certain important aspect, which was first was there used to be a lot of invalid votes before when we were having ballot boxes. The invalid votes because you are putting it halfway down, or something is torn, or something is not appropriately done, like we saw, or what was claimed to be invalid votes in the recent Chandigarh elections, so mayor elections. So these invalid votes were one of the key concerns of the ballot boxes. And there's a study where like so many candidates, margin of election, winning was actually lesser than the number of invalid votes, like it's around 4,000 candidates or during the elections at that point of time. So EVM kind of stopped that invalid. A vote is cast, it is not going to be invalid now, it is going to be valid. It also, the counting errors also was stopped, and the ballot stuffing, which was a major issue in some places, because you could actually stuff in a very short amount of time, which was stopped. Booth capturing is a concept which is different because it had to do with the overall law and order issue about the booth rather than just whether ballot or EVM. You can still capture the booth if you have EVM or ballot. Ballot box, it doesn't make much of a difference. But these three things are what I felt EVM introduced, at the same time surrendering certain very core tenets of elections, which is verifiability to the voter, transparency at the time of counting to the candidate, and the secrecy at the booth level when it comes to secrecy of vote. But then 2019, I was the returning officer of a parliamentary constituency, and I was vehemently arguing about this, especially on the hackability part of it, that if at all it is, then it will be caught that way. So 19 elections, when we were having a training in the ECI, there was one particular instance where it was said that, okay, the VVPAT is a new device which was introduced around 2014, and 2019 was the first elections in which it has been introduced in a mass way in the entire Lok Sabha elections. So it was told that, okay, VVPAT will print the name and the symbol and the sequence number, serial number of the candidate, and the voter will be able to see it. So when it was told during the training, I had some concern, because till now we were continuously claiming that EVMs are a standalone device, that they are candidate unaware or agnostic, it doesn't know what the candidates are. So if it is a standalone device, which is supposed to be unaware of candidates, how is it possible that it is going to print the name of the candidates? Means the candidate themselves don't know that they're going to get a ticket from that constituency, like just a day before nomination. Even the last day of nomination, there is confusion whether he's going to get a ticket or not. So how is the machine going to print this, right? So then I asked this question, how is that a standalone device is able to print these name and symbol of the candidates, because it is known very late in the election cycle, after the elections are announced and very close to the election cycle. So then the answer came, the engineers will come and upload it. So when I heard the term upload it, I was a little concerned because upload means connection, right? There is no way you can upload it without connecting to a device. And any device that you connect to other than these three devices is an external device. And this became a concern. I had raised it at that point itself, which was at that time, it was a very brushed aside. Later, I raised it while during the elections also with state level officials, and then also written to the ECI that this is a concern that some external devices are used to connect and upload things to the VVPAT. Now, this is much more of a concern when we started watching the elections very closely, because I had this question during training. So as conducting the elections, I was a little more apprehensive, or rather you can say curious, because earlier the connection was ballot unit was connecting to the control unit direct. So you press the ballot unit, the vote goes from the ballot unit to the control unit. Now, I am presuming that because they wanted to use the existing ballot unit and the control unit, and it had only, the ballot unit had one output and the CU had one input. If you have to use it, you have to use only a device which is in the middle, right? Because then it can act as a CU to the BU and act as a BU to the CU. It sits in the middle, so the rest of the device don't have to change. This will have one input and one output. And which is also kind of in contradiction to what the Supreme Court had directed in 2013, which is that whatever is getting registered should get printed. So what is getting registered, the vote that gets registered in the CU should get printed in the VVPAT. But now the device configuration is slightly different. There is a BU, where you cast the vote, and there is a VVPAT, which sits in the middle, which is printing, and you can see it, the printed out. And from the vote actually goes from the VVPAT to the control unit. So technically, the VVPAT is now casting the vote. It is not the ballot unit which is casting the vote. Like technically, the input of the CU is actually now the VVPAT. Now, this is the same VVPAT, which is connected to an external device. Be it a laptop or an SLU. So they used to have laptops, or you can use SLUs. And to connect these, upload these symbols onto the machine. And how they do it is because they need to be very clear of the symbols. First, they connect the laptop to the internet, connect it to the ECI website, download all the symbols from there, and generate a VVPAT sheet, and then download the VVPAT sheet to the symbol loading unit. And then those symbol loading units are connected to all the VVPATs, and the VVPAT which sit in the middle, which is essentially casting the vote to the CU, which was a major red flag for me. Like I felt that is not the way the system should have been designed at all, if at all you wanted to add. Now, why this process was even worse is because it surrendered all the pre-VVPAT era safeguards that were there. We said initially that it is candidate unaware, right? It doesn't know what the candidate. Now, if you're pressing 1, the VVPAT is actually printing the name and the symbol of the candidate. So it's already know. If it doesn't know, how is it able to print? So, and the VVPAT is now printing 1 or 2. Like, I'm not getting into the internal schematic of all 3 of these devices. Because the commission has not put out those schematics. So I don't want to get into the conjectures or assumptions. So the whole analysis will be as they are black boxes. As I know only the input and output of it, I'm not going to assume anything what is there inside of it. It's because like I also had a small tenure with Motorola in VLSI design. So we used to have this black box testing. So there is a VVPAT which is in between. We said it is candidate unaware earlier. Now it is not candidate unaware. It knows the candidate. It knows how many, it is printing this Congress or BJP or any of that. Number 2, we said that this FLC and the mock polls are there, which is of so there are 2 randomizations, like which constituency it is coming, which booth it is going. So here we are doing both these randomizations before we are connecting this external device, this laptop or SLU. So if you are connecting it after both the randomizations, we already know when you are connecting. That's a major issue, that when you are connecting the laptop or an SLU to the VVPAT, you actually know which booth this particular VVPAT is going to be, or this particular EVM is going to be. So the candidate aware nature allows for intelligent manipulation. The knowledge about which booth this particular EVM is going allows for a targeted manipulation, right? So one is about intelligent in terms of whether it makes sense to do rather than giving 1 or 2, rank candidate 1, give to 2 or something like that. This also allows for which booth. You don't want to do in a random booth. So this is not that it happens, but these are the concerns, right? So this is the second part of, and the third is actually the verification, which is the mock poll. So the first mock poll is actually done before this connection is done, which is much earlier, the FLC, when that time is done. The second mock poll is done once the connection is actually done. But at that point of time, the issue is 3 things are known at the time of connecting an external device. These external devices. 1, the candidate sequence. So you know what is 1, 2, 3 candidate names and symbols and parties. Number 2, which booth this particular EVM is going. Number three, you also know that which is the election date, and you also know what is today's date. So you are aware of all three information at the time of connecting. So when you have all this information, then again it becomes slightly dicey whether the mock polls itself can be trusted in a complete way. The idea of, so the safeguard that you're saying, the fourth one, of course, was a physical verification aspect, the physical safeguard aspect, that we don't let anybody touch it. So when we are connecting, we are actually using a serial 8-pin connector to connect this. When you are actually allowing an external device to be connected ourselves, it doesn't matter what you do with it later, whether you have AK-47 or a tank protecting it. You are actually allowed the connection in front of your eyes, and you don't know what is transferring. And the other aspect of technical safeguard is neither the laptop nor the SLU are part of the custody chain of the returning officer. It is not kept in the strong room. It is not part of the whole sequence of where the VVPAT and the CU and the BUs are to be kept. It is not part of it. Laptops and SLUs are brought in, done, used for, and immediately after the elections, or I think the elections are all +1, it is taken out. It is not part of the returning officer's custody chain or part of strong room. So those are always remains an external device, right? It cannot be later verified what was there in it or not verified in it. So that is the next concern. The technical safeguard concept is also gone because it was always claimed it is a one-time programmable kind of a calculator. Now they brought in as VVPAT, which was said as a printer, which said it is just a printer, right? A calculator and a printer. It's a very interesting thing because generally people will understand it much easier. But the difficulty is that a printer is an output device. Here you don't connect your keyboard to a CPU through a printer. You connect your keyboard to the CPU and you connect your printer to the CPU. You don't connect keyboard to the printer and then output of the printer to the input of the CPU. That's no more a printer. And if you're able to upload data, it is not again one-time programmable. I'm not going whether they have a firmware inside or whether they have two different memories inside. I'm not getting into the design. Either they have to give the schematics and tell that there is a design, then we can discuss on it, or else it will be always analyzed as a black box. So here there is a device which is sitting in between, which is not one-time programmable, which can be programmed or uploaded, data can be uploaded, which is connected to an external device after both level of randomization, after the FLC and the mock poll, first mock poll, after with an external device, laptops and SLUs, which are not part of the custody chain of the returning officer, and which is what is printing and showing the vote to the voter and also casting the vote in the CU, which is also knowing which party, which candidate and which party is coming at what sequence in the vote. So this becomes now the key aspect. Now the BU and CU are very secondary. It doesn't matter in that whole scheme of things. VVPAT becomes the key in this whole design, and this still itself would not have been an issue. I'll take maybe 3-4 minutes with your permission, sir. Because my 20 minutes are over.
Go ahead.
So this is entirely this makes it even more interesting that why the VVPAT was introduced, right? So in our elections have had different changes. In 52 we had ballot box for each candidate separately. There are so many ballot boxes. In 57 also. Later we realized that okay, we can have one ballot box and we have a ballot paper and you can put and whatever you want to put and put a tappa and then put it inside that. And then 82 EVMs were introduced. It was challenged. Then we went back to the thing, and then we again brought in an amendment and then came to EVM. And 2009 and 10, there was a lot of opposition noise after the two elections that were won with the EVMs, 2004 and 2009. And the Election Commission had called for all-party meeting at that point of time, listening to all the opposition parties. They also suggested this VVPAT, the printed, the verifiability of the aspect of the vote to be a basic thing which needs to be added into the EVM. And that is, and 2013, the Supreme Court also directed that it has to be made mandatory. And that is how the VVPAT got introduced. Now, VVPAT is a very, the term is very explanatory, self-explanatory. It is voter verifiable paper audit trail. That voters should be able to verify and it should be audited. So these two aspects have to be clear. It has to be verifiable and it should be audited. So now, because the commission kind of introduced in a very half-hearted way, the safeguards that you are relying on were all pre-VVPAT era safeguards. That is why we did not put the focus on the verifiability aspect in the VVPAT design, nor did we put any emphasis on the audit part of the process, right? The VVPAT as it came in itself is a jugaad because it got in between. It is printing and then it is casting the vote rather than printing what is cast. So more than that, even the VVPAT itself, the verifiability aspect of the VVPAT got surrendered because the voter is not verifying. The verification is presumed that the voter has already verified. whether you have an objection, even if I have an objection, I can never challenge my vote. I can challenge the next vote, which is a test vote, right? I can never say that my vote, you give me back, it was not correct. It can never be verified. It is always assumed to be verified. The next vote I can challenge, which is a test vote. And if it comes to be what was to be designed in a proper way, then I become the suspect that, okay, my challenge. So we now trust the machine more than the voter. Even if the voter challenge, we say the voter is the focus of all of this. We have now more trust on the EVM, on the machine, than the voter, even if the voter claims other way. That is one aspect of it. The verifiability was supposed to be active verification with an agency to the voter, right? Whether that is when the verification happens. If I give you 100 rupees and say that, okay, this you have to take anyway, the next 100 rupees you can challenge, then that doesn't give you any agency. You have to know that, okay, this 100 rupees, whether it is correct or not, whether I'll check and say that, okay, it is good, I'll take, otherwise I won't take it. So that is where agency of the voter comes in as far as verifiability is there. So verifiability design also, I would feel we again kind of, I don't think any of this is malafide. This is in the kind of hurry in which this VVPAT design got introduced, both in terms of where it in the system and also how it was designed. There is a hurry in it. And because of that, this core aspect of verifiability was surrendered. It was presumed verifiability, or maybe we don't trust our voters that much. Second part of it is audit. Now, this is again a very interesting thing, that generally when there is any kind of an audit that needs, you take a population size, you say that, okay, what is the confidence that you need? And then you apply your hypergeometric distribution and say that, okay, this is what I require. Here we take the entire Indian election as a single population, right? And say that, okay, the whole election, but none of the entire Indian election is not a single event. It is not even done in one phase. Each election to each constituency is one independent event. An election to a constituency is an independent event, because that has a demonstrable result. The whole election doesn't have one result, so election to a constituency is a sample population size that should be seen, and depending on that, the confidence level and how many EVMs to be seen as debug, that needs to be decided, and then the number of VVPATs to be audited should have been found. That would have been the most rational, scientific way to go about the auditing aspect of it. Instead, because the commission felt we are 100% sure nothing can happen, VVPAT is just because all these directions are, we will do one for your sake. Okay, we'll do one in every constituency just to tell that, okay, nothing is happening. And then some people went to the court and said, okay, that is not enough. So court said, okay, na tera na mera, let's do 5. I don't know the reason for that. Why not 6? Why not 4? Nobody knows. So that's okay, 5. Okay, now we do 5. That is again a very, very erratic way, irresponsible way to conduct the audit of part of it. So we have surrendered on the pre-VVPAT era safeguards of the EVM. We have surrendered or not gained on the verifiability aspect of the VVPAT. We have not done the auditing part of the VVPAT. And in this process, what happens is, the underlying principle is record as cast, cast as intended, cast as intended, record as cast, and counted as recorded, right? So that principle gets surrendered. Or to simplify it, there should be two things in any electoral process. As a voter, I should be able to verify my vote. That transparency has to be there. And as a candidate, I should be able to verify the counting. So this verifiability or the transparency or verifiable transparency at the time of voting and at the time of counting. These are the two things that are important. How it is achieved is secondary. These are two things that becomes key to any electoral process, as far as I understand. And here we have surrendered on both. And that is where I think, and the commission's argument, so on that we cannot count all the VVPAT or any of this becomes extremely difficult or it takes time. It's very childish, because we spend, like, I know, having been part of this, we spent in a huge amount of resources and time to ensure that each person gets to vote. We write novel, drama, theater, songs, Hathi pe le jate hain, helicopter pe le jate hain. We do all sort of things. There is sweep. 2 months, we divide into multiple phases. We conduct elections over 2 months. And at the time of counting all those efforts, right? All those efforts was to what? To get the vote and then to count it so that we can announce the result. At that final moment, when it comes to counting, you say, oh, time here. We don't have time. Why you spend so much of effort then for 2 months and money and resource and everybody involved in it? You can't put 10 more tables to count. That is a very childish, I don't know, highly responsible take on the VVPAT counting slip order. I'll just complete one more thing and finish it. The funny thing is, Commission's own conduct of election rules, 2013 amendment, 56D4B, it says that if there is a discrepancy between the count of the VVPAT slips and the count of the EVM, right, the CU count. So there are two devices now. That is another issue. That's a legal question. What is vote? What is my vote? Is it the one which is in the slip, which I saw, or is it the one which is in the CU? Because there are now two recordings of my one expression. I have one expression, which is my vote. Now it is recorded in two different manners. One is as a VVPAT slip, which I saw, and the other is as a CU, which is getting counted. Now, which is actually legally my vote? That is a legal question to answer. Now, Commission itself says that if there is a discrepancy, because there are now two recordings of it, if there is a discrepancy between two of them, then the count of the VVPAT slips should proceed, should get the precedence and should be included in the result sheet, not the count of the CU. So here, that is, very much telling, because in some way it is admitting that if there is a challenge between these two, we give primacy to the VVPAT slip count. That means the CU can be wrong. CU count can be wrong. If the CU count can be wrong, and if VVPAT slip is the legitimate representation or recording of my vote, then naturally count the vote. Why are you counting the duplicate recording of a vote, which you itself say that if there is a discrepancy, I myself will reject? Count the vote. So that is the one of the aspects also I wanted to mention. I think with that I'll conclude my. Sorry, I took 10 minutes extra.
Thanks, Kannan. That was brilliant. Your historical journey from being a faithful to a skeptic to a critique, and from a person who has been himself involved in conducting election. I think that perspective is was very important, and I think all of us learned a lot from this. Our next, the last speaker is Mr. Madhav Deshpande. As he was introduced, he is a technical expert, apart from various other things. So may I request Mr. Deshpande to speak?
Thank you, Mihir, and thank you, Mr. Kannan. It was delightful to hear you. Since you have mentioned about the VVPAT, I'll start with VVPAT. And if I'm allowed to share my screen, I would like to show a half-a-minute kind of animation. It's a very rudimentary animation, but I believe that might bring clarity to a lot of things. Can I share my screen, please?
Yes, you can, and you are a co-host, so you can share your screen.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the EVM arrangement at present is like this. The voter walks up to the ballot unit, decides on casting a yellow vote. The vote goes to the VVPAT. VVPAT prints a yellow slip, which the voter sees, but VVPAT further may transmit a gray vote than transmitting a yellow vote. That's the big problem that Mr. Kannan was talking about. A desirable arrangement would be the voter goes to the ballot unit, decides to cast a blue vote, and that blue vote is simultaneously transmitted to control unit and VVPAT. VVPAT prints the blue receipt, which the voter sees, and thereafter control unit registers the same blue vote. Clearly, it is very obvious that in this case, the VVPAT does not connect to the control unit in any way. And the reason why, now I will stop sharing. So, is that sharing stopped?
Yes.
Great.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So the problem here, I believe the animation might have made things clearer because it's easier to when you see it with your eyes. The problem here with VVPAT is that, as Mr. Kannan said, of the three devices that make up the EVM, it is the only device that is not location agnostic, which means which is sensitive to location. And it is also the device which has a program which is built to recognize the signal that the ballot unit sends it, to read that signal and to map it on a table which has candidate number, candidate name, and the symbol, and then print that candidate number. Now imagine, and for those who have heard me before, maybe you will find this a repetition, but imagine that the table that has this candidate number, name, party name, and symbol, if this table to the row of the candidate which one wants to favor, at the end, if one puts an asterisk or a star, and the program is already written, program doesn't have to change. It is already written to recognize where the star is, and the candidate that has a star against it in the last column will get maybe every third or fifth or seventh vote. Now here you don't have to change the program that has already gone into the VVPAT. The data is what makes does the trick. So VVPAT is the weakest link. It is the most vulnerable part, and VVPAT needs to go away from being in the middle to being either connected to the control unit or connected to the ballot unit, but not to both. And I personally feel, as a technical person, it should not be connected to control unit, because the way control unit and ballot unit are connected is called technically a serial cable, and that serial cable communicates two ways. So while it receives data, it can also give data or even give commands. So if VVPAT is connected to the control unit, it could not only give data to control unit, but it could also ask it to store that data in a particular way or overwrite the already received vote. So that is a big risk. So the VVPAT has to get away from being in the middle. It has to be connected only to the ballot unit, and the ballot unit has to be connected to both the control unit and the VVPAT and give that signal simultaneously. So we would be sure that what we saw in the paper slip is what was stored in the control unit. That's one easy solution. It doesn't take a whole lot to do that. The other problem is that at no point in time, and this comes from the fact that this whole system was designed in 1977 when electronics and internet and computers all were very, very nascent. So naturally, like we had Fiat cars in 1977, which were considered to be better cars than other cars. But then soon after Maruti came, we found them under-designed, inadequate in terms of their features, what they could do, how they would work, and so on and so forth. Similarly, this system also became under-designed the moment advances were made in electronics, computer science, and the communication, the connectivity part. Now, what we failed to do as Election Commission is, over the period of time, they should have upgraded the design of the EVM. What has happened is the control unit and the ballot unit are identified only visually. So, Mr. Kannan, tell me if I go wrong anywhere. What happens is both the control unit and the ballot unit have numbers on them. They are supposed to be engraved, but doesn't matter whether engraved or labeled. The list, they are listed on a paper, and all the candidate representatives sign that, yes, these were the numbers, unit numbers that were used. And at the time of counting, these are again visually verified that, yes, those numbers are present. What happens here is, just like you could replace a whole ballot box, you could replace a control unit. Nothing stops you from doing it if from some antisocial element to do it, because there is no electronic recognition. So electronic pairing must happen. The way electronic pairing happens, and I'll give you an example of a car again. In all modern cars today, we keep our key in our pocket, walk up to the car, touch the handle, or press a button on the handle and the car unlocks. That happens because the car and the key are paired at the time of manufacturing. If I was to walk with my key to your car, the car would not unlock. Now, this happens in a wireless way. So we definitely are not proposing that. What we should do, nonetheless, is pair the control unit and the ballot unit with a serial cable. What they should store is the control unit stores the ballot unit serial number. All electronic devices have serial numbers. So the control unit should store the ballot unit serial number and the date and time when the pairing happens. And the pairing should happen just before the polling starts. So if the polling is going to start at 9:30, then at 9 o'clock on the polling day, pairing should be done. Control unit will store ballot unit's number and time, and that same ballot unit number and time, even the ballot unit will store. Ballot unit will store control unit's number and time, and control unit will also save the same thing. Now let the polling happen. And before counting, ballot unit and control unit should again be connected with a serial cable and asked whether they recognize each other. If there is something wrong with the control unit, if the control unit has been replaced, let's imagine the worst case. Somehow this control unit with same electronic serial number is duplicated. Now, and that is replaced the legitimate control unit. Now, this illegitimate control unit, however, will not have the date and time string along with that serial number because it was not paired on that day. That moment is past. So that uniqueness will ensure that the control units cannot be replaced. So that additional security measure needs to be taken. And the third measure that needs to be taken is make the control units and the ballot units traceable. Again, in 1977, there was no internet, there was no GPS, obviously there was none. But today, we use GPS, we use live location every day on our phone. And you get a GPS transmitter for as low, transmitter chip unit for as low as 220 Indian rupees. So there's nothing wrong. I mean, I just don't understand why it cannot be done, because you don't have to, again, integrate this electronically with the control unit. No, our strength, EVMs cannot be hacked. They may be made to malfunction, but they cannot be hacked is because they don't connect with anything. So don't connect this. Don't connect this electronically. Make a separate unit in a box, which is GPS transmitter, which has its own circuit and a battery. Put it inside the control unit. It doesn't connect electronically. It will be only traceable. You will not be able to, just as, when we ask somebody to share their live location, if we want to talk to that person who is sharing the live location, we can't do that through the live location signal. We have to call them. Similarly, this GPS transmitter will only share its location, which will be traced. So make the control units also traceable, because the other problem is if anything goes wrong with the security and control units are, as Mihir said some time back, a few lakh were missing. Now this can easily snowball into a national security threat, because the whole election can be rigged. And today there is, apart from the visual verification, there is nothing else. So make this connectivity, again, it's a fairly simple thing. Make sure that pairing is done before polling and verification is done before counting. At least these three things need to be done immediately. Ideally, as even I am an engineer and a postgraduate of computer science, so having done a lot of things with hardware and software, as an engineer, I would say the unit, the EVM as a unit, each subunits should have a full audit trail. What that means is it should, in a write once memory, which means you cannot rewrite, you cannot overwrite what has been written. It should record every step, including power on event. So when the power is received, it will record power on, date and time. When button 2 is pressed, it will say button 2 pressed, date and time. Button 3, etc., etc., etc. When it sends that button to signal to, let's say, from ballot unit to control unit, ballot unit will say sent to control unit. Control unit, when it receives it, it will say received to from ballot unit. So that a full replay can be done in case of doubt. Because see, this is now an electronic election system. Our vote has become electronic. And the proof of correctness has to come from the system. Again, there is another problem, as Mr. Kannan said. We cannot verify what our vote was. We can never challenge it because one is it is a secret ballot and second is it is already cast. The proof has to come from the electronic system. Past is never the proof of future. My favorite example is, if that were so, none of us would be dead because we've never been dead in the past. But that doesn't happen. Similarly, if I make a call and it goes connects to a wrong number, it doesn't mean that every call that I'm going to make is going to be a wrong number. But if I make another call and it doesn't connect as a wrong number, it doesn't mean that my first call that I connected as wrong number did not happen. Yes, that wrong call happened, but now this next call is not a wrong call. So all these proof has to come from the electronic system. When we deposit a check in the bank gives us electronic proof in the form of an entry in our digital statement of accounts. That proof comes from the electronic system. Similarly, this has to come from the electronic system. And lastly, 2 minutes, we have to realize one thing, that programs are routinely written to act differently on or after a particular date. And the simplest example is interest calculation program in the banks. It calculates interest every day because banks have to make a provision for that interest when they submit their report. But it's only at the end of the quarter, 30th September, 31st December, whatever, it also knows that it has to take an additional action of depositing the interest in the depositor's account if the deposit is a quarterly interest payout deposit. So the program reacts to the date. So no matter how much I test something before, if the program is written in such a way that it will work differently from tomorrow, no matter what I do until today, I am not going to find any misbehavior. And therefore, that the system did not misbehave has to be established by the system and not by the testers beforehand. That onus cannot be shifted to the testers or the challengers. Challenges cannot be thrown in this case. The proof has to come from the system. Thank you so much for being patient listeners. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Madhav. That was very enlightening. And I think what both the speakers have done, what we have not done today, is we have not thrown allegations that this is happening, that is happening, A is happening, B is happening, this one is hacking, that one is hacking. What I think today's speeches show is what can happen. It may have happened earlier, but what can happen. And it's something which casts doubt on how a free and fair election should be conducted. And therefore, it becomes important because issue is not, and I was just reading, I think today or yesterday, that these EVMs are manufactured at Bale, and Bale is now being run by some office bearers of the ruling party. And so we really don't know to what extent the actual hacking is happening, actual manipulation is happening. But from what these both our speakers told us, these are rectifiable things, and rectifiable a quick way and in a cheap way. So it is not something which can't be rectified. If we want to have free and fair elections, if we want to remove any doubts from whether elections are free and fair, I think it becomes important to have a system which, to the extent possible, is foolproof. And that system is possible. That system doesn't exist today, but that system is possible. It's possible even for the 2024 elections. And it is in that context, I think, that we heard both the speakers. Now, I will throw it open. I will request only two things. One is that if there are questions, then please make them short. If there are comments, please don't exceed 2 to 3 minutes so that others can have also can comment. If you can raise your hand, yes. Nikhil Joshi has raised his hand. Nikhil, can you come in?
Thank you. So I would like to understand some practical relevance and significance for Indian elections. Say there is an evil and rich person who wants to win an Lok Sabha seat, then how many party workers they'll need? Like, how can they ensure that no one enters those accomplices as sting operators to expose this project? How many corrupt election officers they'll need? How they can do all this away from the eyes of what opponent party workers and reporters. Like I would like to understand if, let's say that all this is doable for an EVM as the machine in itself, but is this scalable for having a real impact in any of our elections?
Can we take 2-3 questions and then go to the speaker? In case if somebody has comments, please go ahead also.
So, if I may try to
Yes.
answer Mr. Nikhil Joshi, and I think probably Kannan would be in a better position than myself. But see, the thing is, you don't need, when the data is up, let's understand one thing. As I said, when the data is uploaded, the program has already been saved in the VVPAT. It's only the data that's going to create mischief. And the data upload, the operator who uploads that data may not even know what that data is. Now, if that is so, if the mischief happens at that level, then the entire constituency can be very easily affected, because the same data with the same star mark is going to get uploaded, for example, without anybody knowing about it, genuinely not knowing about it. Only the person who put the star mark knows that. Kannan, if you want to comment.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that was one of the main concern because prior to that, because there was no physical access of the EVM to anyone, right? You were not allowing anybody to connect to it. So the argument was about some Bluetooth or something from outside, and that was the kind of arguments which you're having. The concern is also that at the time of commissioning, before the introduction of VVPATs, the directions were no electronic devices are allowed inside anywhere, right? Anywhere nearby. After the introduction of VVPATs, the direction is that whatever the engineers who are coming, they can bring it. And again, internet access also has to be provided.
बड़ा link confidence बढ़ाता है और
and they also have their instructions, like the laptop should be formatted before they kind of use it, and then they have to have the Windows installed afresh. Then one software has to be downloaded, and they have to download it from the they use their own device to download the software, and then they connect to the commission to get the latest symbols. You don't need anyone, because as an RO, I don't know. That was the biggest issue, that I don't know when you're connecting an external device. Let's say in front of everyone, 1,000 people are there. I have a USB. I'm connecting it to the computer, and I'm saying that I'm transferring music. That will very may be the case. That may not be the case. There are thousands of people here, but nobody, because it is data transfer. It is not like somebody is trying to actively physically do something with it or any of that. And that transfer of music from the USB to the device is actually legal, which is perfectly doable, and there is nothing to be alarmed about it. And there is no scan after that to see that whether something has been actually something has happened or not. There is no way to verify. That is what, and we should not see it essentially as a political party or this or that kind of a concern. This has to be seen if there are vulnerabilities in the system. Then, as Sir also mentioned, it is a matter of national security rather than anything else. Why should we assume one party is doing it, the other party is doing it? That is not the assumption. What is the responsibility of the commission? And it is not even for us to debate, I would say, because a lot of this debate is leading to voter apathy, and that is something we need to be very clear about. This is for the election commission to address. And when 2009 and 10 these questions were raised, commission actually called to understand the concerns and said, okay, these are the things that we can do. Of course, the solutions were slightly half of that, but still that accommodative stance from the commission is what I would say is lacking, and that is leading to a lot of doubts and a lot of questioning and a lot of theories coming out of that. To answer your question, nobody needs to know. There can be a man in the middle and MITM or kind of a thing, and you will never know what connected, what got uploaded, what got is there, and there is no way to verify.
Rahul Mehta has requested that he be given about 2 to 3 minutes. He wants to. He has his own way of looking at things. Yeah, Rahul, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay. I have made this. You must have seen this demo on the pinned post of Prashant Bhushanji. My colleague had also given it on Jantar Mantar. I have made this homemade VVPAT and homemade EC to show that VVPAT is not reliable at all. Means the paper slip. What I am showing is that the paper slip of VVPAT is not reliable. So first, I am the first voter. Let us say I am voting for banana. So as a voter, I see banana in my VVPAT window. So as a voter, I am satisfied that my vote is not stolen. Vote has been cast correctly, the paper vote. Now, let us say I am second voter. So I am again giving vote to banana, let us say. So I am the second voter. I also see a banana paper slip. I don't see anything to suspect. So both voters came, both voters voted for banana, both saw banana paper slip here. Now let us look at the results. This is our CU, control unit. So now CU says that apple got 1 vote, banana got 1 vote. Now anyone can say that, okay, CU is not reliable. Let us look at the paper vote. So the paper vote, you can see it is 1 banana and 1 apple. So if my program is sitting inside the CU and BU and VVPAT of these bail machines, then my program will show banana to both voters. Both voters saw banana, as you can see. And VVPAT is showing 1 banana, 1 apple, and control unit is also showing 1 apple, 1 banana. And how this manipulation was accomplished? Accomplishing manipulation is easy. Point is that neither voter noticed it, nor collector, nor RO, nor presiding officer, no one will notice. Why? Because the glass color was changed in 2017. I don't have the picture right now. I'll send it on to Mihir Bhai later. That before that glass was transparent, colorless, and then light used to remain on for 15 seconds. In year 2015, light used to remain on for 15 seconds. Now I'll explain how the manipulation was accomplished by my program. When first voter voted for banana, just 1 second, I'll restart the whole demo to show how manipulation can be easily accomplished by the program inside VVPAT and EVM. So the first voter comes, he votes for banana. So it printed banana, and through the black glass, voter can see banana. But the program wanted to steal the vote. So what program did is that it turned the light off, but it didn't cut the paper. But neither first voter, nor second voter, nor presiding officer, nor RO can see any foul play because the glass is black. Right now, I'm keeping it open. So you saw that banana was not cut. केला काटा नहीं था. अब दूसरा वोटर आता है, वो भी केले को वोट देता है. तो इसने क्या किया, सिर्फ लाइट चालू कर दी और दूसरे वोटर को पहले वोटर का एक केला बनाना दिखाया. अब अंधेरा है तो देखो अंधेरे में क्या कर रहा है. इसने एक एप्पल प्रिंट किया, लेकिन जो एप्पल प्रिंट किया वो प्रिसाइडिंग ऑफिसर को, वोटर को दिखेगा नहीं, क्योंकि कांच का रंग काला है. कांच काला है इतना ही नहीं, आगे से फ्रंट साइड मिरर है, बैक साइड. तो ये है वीवीपैट का रिजल्ट और मैं शो रिजल्ट करता हूं कंट्रोल यूनिट पे. कंट्रोल यूनिट ने भी बोला एक एप्पल एक बनाना. तो दोनों कंट्रोल यूनिट और वीवीपैट ने रिजल्ट बदल दिया. और आपके सामने यू हैड नोटिस्ड कि both voter had voted for banana. So this is what is happening. My demo is over.
Thank you very much.
Now I have made a demo. I'll give you the Facebook link. उसमें मैंने 10 वोट डाले हैं.
Rahul bhai,
6 वोट बनाना को 4 एप्पल को. Yeah, sure.
Rahul bhai, you will have to be very short now because others also want to speak. That is a
Yeah. So I'll just take half a minute. मैंने एक फेसबुक पे डेमो बनाया, वो थोड़ा लंबा है, आई कांट शो इट हियर. 10 वोट डाले, 6 एप्पल, सॉरी, आई वोटेड फॉर 6 बनाना, 4 वाटरमेलन एंड 0 एप्पल. और एप्पल को 5 वोट मिले पेपर में भी और कंट्रोल यूनिट में भी, और बनाना को सिर्फ 3 वोट मिले, वाटरमेलन को सिर्फ 2 वोट मिले. तो एप्पल को एक भी वोट नहीं मिला 10 में से और वो जीत गया. So that is the manipulation that can be accomplished using the black glass of VVPAT and the inside program. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Rahul bhai, for bringing a different angle to the whole thing and an additional problem. Is there anybody else who wants to respond, who wants to ask question? I guess everybody is stunned at listening to all those speakers who spoke. I'll just wait for yes, there are 2 people. Sandhya, you wanted to speak? And then Shukla Sen. Sandhya, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask is, how do we proceed further? What thoughts people have in terms of what action can be taken? And because see, people are protesting on the road, how much they understand, they basically do not have faith in the system. And it is actually adversely affecting the voting pattern. Many times people just don't want to go for voting because they think EVM is actually manipulating everything. So how does it matter if I vote or I don't vote? So it is actually impacting the election. Besides the fact that nobody believes the result, and there is no way to challenge it. So what is the way ahead? Because if we do this and we do not challenge it in whatever fashion, then I think we have a really very difficult time ahead.
Shukla, you wanted to say something? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have unmuted. Thank you so much. Yeah, the point is, what do we do now? That's the point. I personally have a hunch that as yet no rigging has been done through the EVM, but that's only a feeling that cannot be proved or disproved or whatever. How to make it rigging free? First thing is this, I believe that 2 persons, I am not very clear what Mr. Kannan has said and what Mr. Deshpande has said. They are exactly on the same page. Mr. Deshpande has said that the ballot unit should simultaneously send messages to the control unit and the VVPAT. and the VVPAT should not talk to the control unit. Whether that will solve the problems raised by Mr. Kannan, I am not too sure. But that's one point. So I would say, and then the third, Mr. Mehta said black glass, transparent glass, that I couldn't, in fact, honestly enough, I couldn't make much sense of it. But I believe that he has made a point. So I would say that these three people at least should sit together and try to formulate what are the remedial measures. That's the first point, along with others. These three people should sit together. The next point, which is very important, we are expecting that the ECI has changed its character over the years. Right now, the ECI's job is not to do a free and fair election. Its job is to ensure Modi wins. We must not have any illusion on that score. So under these circumstances, whatever we suggest, the ECI is not going to do anything. ECI most probably will not even respond to that in order to kill time. Under those circumstances, even if the court has also lately surrendered. Actually, Chandrachud was not this bad initially, but lately he appears to have completely surrendered. But even then, that's the only avenue open. There is no other avenue. So we'll have to think on that line. So 2 points. One is a experts committee must sit together and finalize the recommendations, what recommendations we are going to make. The second thing is, what do you do with those recommendations? That also legal experts and other experts, they will have to sit together and join hands. That's all. Thank you so much.
Madhav.
Yeah, just one to Shukla's comment. One comment. Even if we throw a challenge to the Election Commission to prove, without electronic proof, to prove that the election was fair, they cannot do it. The reason is very simple. Our ballots are secret. So they would not know at any point in time. They cannot give us a proof that 100 people voted yellow and 50 people voted gray actually. Because even if I claim coming out of the booth that I voted yellow, I might have actually voted gray. My vote is secret. When the input is secret, there is no way that even the Election Commission will be able to prove that the election was fair, unless the proof comes in the electronic format. And the most reliable thing to do is, as I said, have a complete audit trail. But that is a long haul. What 3 suggestions I gave today are easily doable even before the next general election.
The interesting thing is actually the control unit has a sequential printout option. So you can actually sequentially print all the votes if that is only accessed with there is an election petition or other things. And the sequential printout can be verified with the form which is there, which is kept at the booth. So where the number of who came first, who came second. So that is on the one side, and the sequence of the votes, which actually sequential printout from the EVM can actually. So I'm just trying to the thing that it cannot be verified. The secrecy is only as long as there is no direction from the court. After that, it can actually be taken out, and the facility is actually already there in the CU. So that is one aspect. The other thing about what can we do, and of course, ma'am's concern is also my own concern, which is this questions on EVM. I was a little reluctant also to now come when sir called for this meeting, because this timing of these concerns or this discussion should not lead to further apathy, because if there is no trust in the system, then voting itself will not happen. People will stop coming to the booth and voting. So if at all there is, as far as I understand, there are 2 things. We may not be able to do anything electronic change at this point of time. Already EVMs have been dispatched to the districts, and it is there wherever it is there. So the verifiability, for me, two things are important, which I said. What is actually the verifiability at the time when the person is voting, and that means the voter should be aware and very actively verify. Second is the person, the candidate should be able to count whatever is there, right? The example that Mehta sir showed, actually the issue is there is no verifiability. There is only a transparency for a few seconds, which the glass shows or whatever. There is no actual verifiability of the vote by the voter. That is the example that was said. So verifiability we cannot push for at this point of time, at least at this election. What we can say is that please go vote, and at least visually, the passive verification part at least as a task, because you can't say both things. You can't say that okay, EVMs don't give you anything, and also ask people to vote. So you have to tell what you need to do at the time of voting to ensure that the chances of such kind of things are minimized. So that is to please go vote, and at least look at the VVPAT, verify that the VVPAT is actually casting the vote. It is not foolproof, but that is all that we have at this point of time. We have elections in 2 months' time. So at least we see that it is correct. Number two aspect of it is, if there is in the short term, which is a challenge, which is a legal challenge, is that if the commission, what is to get it defined through the Supreme Court, that what is the vote? Is it the paper slip, or is it the electronic vote? And in context of 56D, whether if paper slip is actually my vote, can we at least have those counted, right? So that for the counting part, we still have another few months' time, and which is actually purely an administrative exercise at this point of time. It's still not foolproof, because without verification, the audit doesn't make much sense. But these are the two things I believe can be done at this point of time. Especially all the communication that goes to the public should be very clear that vote and verify, at least through visually verify or see the vote. That's the task that can get the voter. On the committees, there are multiple committees. There is a citizen committee on elections, which are there. A lot of people, we've also been part of a lot of those things. As sir was telling, there is no response from the commission. Commission is stonewalling, or it is in a very combative mood, saying that okay, if any questions on the process is a question on the result. No, question on the process is independent of the result. If somebody is saying a window is open, be careful, doesn't mean something has been stolen. It is just a suggestion that a window is open, please close it, right? You don't need to say that. You prove that something is stolen, then only I'll come and do XYZ, right? So at that point of time, the main question to the commission, or a suggestion, if at all, it is that it is a process improvement suggestion, and it will take time, but at least heed to it. Nobody is going to challenge any results till this far, because you admitted acknowledged a concern. But yeah, the message to the voter should be very clear, that vote and at least see what is there, because not at this time I don't see anything changing in this 2 months. I don't see anything changing in this 2 months.
Madhav?
Can I mean, I am not a legal expert in any way, but the common person's question probably, as Kannan said, time is very short. Yes, all of us see that. But can we approach the election commission saying that, okay, if you say 2 months are not sufficient, you will take 6 months, then postpone the election by 6 months or 4 months, and do this, and then get a fair and trustworthy mechanism in place. Can we do that?
Well, that might be difficult in the sense that by May, the elections have to be, the new Lok Sabha has to be convened. So that is one problem. Of course, in a crisis, it can always be postponed, like it had happened in 2002 in Gujarat when the communal violence took place. At that time, the elections were the election commission said that the situation is not right for holding election. It was postponed. It has happened in other places also.
Jammu Kashmir.
So there are some other questions.
Yeah. Beena?
In the chat box.
Yeah, but I'm seeing the hands here first. Beena Naik, and then Rahul. Yeah, Beena.
I'm calling from Goa. I'm a lay person, but I just want, this is just a curious thing that I would like to know, that if we try to make the use of EVM machine only and just take out the printout and put it in the box, and later on count that printed